So when we're dealing with relationship, there's our part and there's the other person. Okay, and um, with this work, we're really trying to own our part because that's what we can change. And so this is going to be indicated by our reaction to things. So how I feel when I'm dealing with another person, that's going to be triggering things within me. That's going to be bringing up past stories, also maybe incomplete learning, so still might have to learn some lessons. It could also be a reflection of my buried shame. So this is a big one for people. Generally when I'm working with the client and they're telling me about a troubling situation, one of the questions I'll ask is, what's the younger version of you that modeled those same behaviors? And so a lot of times we can see the behaviors in another person, but it's a reflection for us because we're ashamed that we used to operate that way. So maybe we've gotten a little bit further along and we've grown out of that pattern, but we did it because we were ashamed of that behavior. So that's what drove the change, but we're still holding on to the shame attached to the situation. So it's this younger part of us that we've kind of locked away and we pretend never existed, and that's really what we're feeling. And um, so essentially, we have this mirror situation going on in relationships. We're experiencing ourselves through another person. Okay, that's what a relationship is they're giving us direct feedback of the work that we need to do. And the work that we need to do is always going to be something from our past that's left unresolved, that we've left in a negative place. And so we may have like shifted our behaviors out of it, but with that shame that's still intact, we might be reactionary, we might be judgmental. And we're actually rejecting that version of ourselves when we encounter these types of dynamics where it's like I'm shaming the other person because I'm holding the shame inside still. And so that's how we work the puzzle to we want to accept that part of ourselves, and when we go in and do that work, then we start to accept the other person as they are, and we don't feel like we need to change them. So in essence, it's I'm trying to control the situation so that I avoid that part of me. So I wish this other person would behave differently in order for me to not have to feel my shame. So this is a little complicated, but it's more of this. If we see it as a reflection, if we see it as like this is bringing a reaction out of me, those are our parts that we can change. Okay, and that's where we shift. So the change initiated from me being ashamed of a behavior, and so that drove my actions to be different. And so the second time around, it's going to be I need to develop self compassion for that part of myself. Okay. So I need to return that part of myself back to love. Okay. I need to get back clean where I'm not being judgmental about somebody that's operating that way because I used to. Right. So, um, this is a little bit deeper, but it's kind of as you go deeper, this is really where the work is you're experiencing yourself through another person, and that continues your healing. All these things happen in layers and levels, and if we don't heal that shame, now we have the judgment and we can't hold the space for that person. So as we heal ourselves, we hold the space to heal others. And also, when we're dealing with those dynamics with another person, um, you kind of put yourself back in those shoes and be like, what was I thinking when I was operating that way, and what helped me get out of that? And that's where you can offer advice and wisdom to other people if you're frustrated, if they're willing to listen. Is you can point them in the direction that helped you get through that phase so you could grow out of it. And so, to complete your growing of that situation, we need to transform it into self compassion, which will also ultimately be self forgiveness. Okay, so when you forgive yourself, you're releasing all the shame attached to that. And ultimately, you're returning it back to peace. And now I'm going to experience that relationship differently where I'm not going to be coming with the same judgment and triggers. So I'm going to be able to hold a different space or container for that relationship, and I'll start to experience that person differently because they're just responding to the judgment that I'm putting off. That's why they're acting that way, is to show me about myself.